Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second week of exploring the soul trait of humility here in our seventh round of our American Mussar weekly gathering. It's still a very heavy time for those of us in the Jewish and Jewish adjacent community. And I think now it's really more important than ever for us to lean into our spiritual tools, our spiritual technology to help fortify us, to help us kind of cope with a lot of strong emotions and heartache over everything that's going on in the world and in our country. We'll begin today, as we always do, with a short meditation. So I invite you to relax and close your eyes. Get comfortable in your seat and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. As you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them go. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema. Listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema. Listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Some more hellos. I see we've had Stephanie join us, and Paul and Marianne. So hello, welcome. We're going to get started. As I warned you, oops, the cat just managed to unplug my computer somehow. What'd you do? There we go. Let's see. Okay, that worked. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about this idea of harm reduction. And I'd heard the term and it seemed to resonate with me as I wrote in the email that went out yesterday. I actually did a little more research and I thought it was from the Buddhist world, and it may be, but on the internet, what came up was an idea. It was actually around drug treatment. It's about recognizing human dignity and what are small steps we can take that would reduce the harm caused by drug use for both individuals and by their community. But I think it's a really powerful concept. And as I wrote, I think it's something that the idea really meshes well, as I see it, with humility. So I wanted to start with some really simple questions as we start to go into this. First of all, what is harm? And what is harm reduction? So first of all, what does harm mean? I
hurting
can't
another
see all
person,
of you, so feel free to just unmute.
hurting another person, harming them is hurting them.
Right, so harm is hurting, and it could be hurting another person. Of course, it could also be hurting the self. Um, what else? Other thoughts about harm? Yeah, Elisa.
I saw harm reduction in relation to the statement which you had given us last time, no more than my place, not less than my space.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that these conditions are both necessary and sufficient, and they're interdependent. My place or space in the world, not less than my space, is contingent upon not overstepping boundaries, no more than my place.
Mm-hmm.
And also that my place in the world diminishes in value if it infringes upon the rights of others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the statement, no more than my place, not less than my space, is based on egalitarian principles.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. And so then bring that together with harm reduction. I think it was implied, but maybe if you could finish the thought, or is there more that you'd like to say on that?
Well, I think what I had said was that the idea of not overstepping boundaries would be a way of reducing harm
Mm-hmm.
and not infringing upon the rights of others is also related to harm reduction.
Yeah, great.
I
Thank
think those concepts are implied by the statement which you had given us by what is his name?
Alan Marinas. Yeah,
Marinus. Okay.
yes, he
Yeah,
wrote that. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Bonnie, what would you like to add?
I think it's more than just people. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very much the environment.
Uh-huh.
I think those of us who are incredibly concerned about the environment, who are paying attention to it and are doing the best things we can, do get frustrated when we go to other states and they don't seem to give a damn.
Mm.
I think that we're very much in a bubble in Northern California, and we think we're doing all of the right things, and we are. There's obviously more that we could do, but I think the environment. I also think it affects not just people but animals.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. So what I'm hearing and what you're implying is when we're talking about our place or our space, how is, Elisa brought up, how is it impacting other people? And you're extending that to saying, how is it impacting animals or the planet? And sometimes we might do things that are harmful to the planet or harmful to animals. And those are ways that we can apply harm reduction as well. Am I understanding you correctly? Wonderful. Thank you. Wendy.
Hi. Well, it's interesting because harm is a noun and also a verb. So it has an action part and a part
Sorry, I
where,
just got to put the kitten outside. I'm still.
okay, that's good.
Okay.
Okay. So it has an action part and then a part where it could be done to you or where you're
Mhm.
just facing it. So I think threat, you could be, there could be a threat, and that's like the noun part. But I think one of the things that maybe we don't think about so much is when we ignore harm, when we ignore vulnerability, when we're just not aware or we make ourselves not aware, we don't see it. And kind of a lack of consideration, not consideration for people, but it's like a lack of considering something. It's kind of like closing your eyes to it.
Yeah, so great, Wendy. So tie that into a humility practice then, like the part about closing our eyes. What does that mean for me as an individual who's practicing Mussar and wants to take a harm reduction humility lens? How does that relate?
Sure. Um, so I'm not wanting to see it because I don't feel like I need to go do something, or I need to interact or interfere or that, because I'm somebody who I think I am, but I'm not. I'm not. I'm not in my space because it's calling me to actually act. And so if I just ignore that, that's not humility.
Yeah, so in order to reduce harm, then what is the first thing we need to do?
See it there.
We need
See
to
it.
see it, right?
Yeah,
We
comprehend
need
it.
to notice it. We need to be conscious of it.
Right.
Awesome, thank you. Del.
So I guess I associate harm uh, with an adverse consequence. So whether it's a fracturing of a relationship with a person or a community or with the environment, it's an adverse, it's some form of adverse consequence. And I guess what I'm wondering uh, with the term harm reduction is the assumption that the harm is going to occur and that the objective is to lessen that consequence, or does harm reduction include harm avoidance?
What do you think?
Well, I think it could be both.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I'm constructing a false dichotomy that it could be both of them.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it could be. I think, like, in the context where this was developed in the drug treatment world, it was a answer to the abstinence only approach. The only thing you can do is you have to stop using drugs. And so they would do things like, well, people are going to keep using drugs potentially, but if we do a needle exchange, you'll stop the spread of AIDS, which would make the whole community safer. Now, maybe you agree with needle exchange, maybe you not. That's sort of beyond the scope of today, but that's kind of an example of a harm reduction. We're gonna, without worrying about, ending drug use, we know that if we stop the spread of AIDS, that's less harm. Now, of course, if someone stops drug use, that's even better. That's reducing even more harm, but we can't necessarily control that. And that's one of the things that I think is really powerful about it, because part of humility is recognizing what we can control and what we can't control. And boy, there is a lot we cannot control right now. And so, right, Karen.
So, thinking about the place in this space, humility as it relates to harm reduction,
Mhm.
if we are not careful about our place and our space, we can get in the way of other people. And when something gets in our way, that could be harmful. And so knowing our place in our space, we can listen, we can step aside, we can be there, but we don't actually have to get in the way.
Mm.
And then I also realized that the expression to get in harm's way, sometimes we need to be also cognizant of our space and our place and maybe push that boundary a little bit to get in harm's way to reduce harm.
Mhm.
So there's a flip side of the coin there, yes?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that connection.
We can use this to get into harm's way so that harm is reduced, and we can stay out of the way of people living their lives the way they want to live them, as long as it's not a safety issue to us. Again, by using humility to be supportive, but not get in their way. So on two counts, we may be reducing harm.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. Paul. Paula, we're not hearing you.
There we go. Hear me now?
Bingo. Okay, now I hear you.
So I actually had a thought last week. So as I go through my process of accepting retirement, my thoughts have been bubbling up in all kinds of interesting ways. And one of them was I've been becoming active locally in environmental issues on Cape Cod. And in particular, I think this is a great catchphrase, harm reduction, because we're trying to have people take a look at how their usual practice of using, in our case, septic systems is reduced, how that is harming the environment. How can we reduce it? And of course, people tend to go to an extreme and say, as you were saying with needle exchange, it's like, well, we can't just step, this is not going to solve the whole problem. It's like, well, no, it's not going to solve the whole problem, but it is a step in the right direction. It is a reduction of harm. And that is something that anybody can do. We try to make it an easy step. So I thought that was interesting. So I had this thought about with both people and the environment, as somebody else said earlier, that both factors are how we can bring this idea of humility is what is my appropriate presence? How can I and how can I take care of that in a useful way? And I like the humility and the harm reduction piece because it's not a one size fits all either. It's really contextually based.
Yes.
I think what Karen was just talking about is that it's not always going to be the same. How much you engage with your with an issue or with somebody, you might, as she said, it might be some harm in the short term, but overall it's going to be a harm reduction. Sort of understanding how that can come about is really important. And that, in this country, that goes all over the place. People are trying to say, well, that's not going to stop everything if you do that. And it's like, it's not going to stop everything by doing that. But we have, it's good to do something. How can we agree upon doing something so we're not whatever.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I mean, in my head, it makes perfect sense, but just never know how it comes out.
Yeah, no, it does. And it's reminding me of, again, we're on social media. Somebody posts something that we don't like. We can write a comment about how stupid they are, or how they're a bad person, or how they're a bad Jew, or they're a bad whatever, which is not going to change their mind at all. Is not going to change anybody else's mind, but it's going to inflame a lot of people. So, again, that's not to say that we need to remain silent. That's not to say that we should be passive, but it's really to think about, like, how do we reduce the harm, especially where some of it's a judgment call. Like, what's the right tactic, or what should we do about Israel? I don't know. Nobody knows. People have a lot of opinions. And if someone has an opinion that you really, really disagree with, think about a harm reduction approach as you engage them. That's my practice. You may, I'm not being prescriptive, but just one way that I approach it and think about it. Toby.
Something that I was thinking of with regard to environmental issues, which are big everywhere, but not everybody is willing to do everything. And I think that goes to the humility piece, no more than my place, no less than my space, because each person can do what they can do. If they're willing to do something, they may not be willing to, go vegan and live in a yurt and, whatever, but they might be able to use a non-detergent laundry soap. And no dryer sheets and things like that. Everybody's willing to do what they're willing to do. And if everybody does something, like Paul was saying, we're not going to, no, there's no blanket, proscription against everybody doing anything, because this is
Mhm.
America and that's not going to work. But if everybody does something,
Mhm.
it will result in harm reduction. And also there's that humility, no more than my space, no less than my place.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. What's powerful about marrying the two, and thank you, Toby, for your comment, is that it brings it back to, Mussar is about what do I do? And so I'll do what I can do, and I can be mindful about what I can do. And I can be grateful for things that other people do, but I'm not necessarily going to, right. So let's take it a little bit deeper. I'm going to get us to breakout rooms earlier this week, because that was a request. But before we go there, I do want to revisit the spectrum, because I think that's an important part. We've talked about no more than my space, not less than my place. Someone, again, it's on the slide, but I think it's still helpful to prime the pump. When we have too little humility, what is the danger? Someone want to unmute, maybe who we haven't heard from yet? What happens if we have too little humility? If we have too much humility, we may not step forward and give an answer when one is requested. What about too little? Yeah, Del?
Well, I think that the risk that you run is that you take up all the oxygen in the room, crowd out other ideas,
Yeah.
and it becomes a one-person showing.
Yes. Thank you. And while you're unmuted, Del, could you please read this the words on the slide here about holding oneself back?
Yes, certainly. Holding oneself back in order to please others, or in order to not risk offending others, which is a variation on the same theme, isn't humility. It's taking up less than my space, and that's not a character strength, it's a character flaw.
Great, thank you. So Sue, I see your hand, and we'll get to you in a minute, but I just wanted, before we get too far from this, and that was from Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt, also known as the Velveteen Rabbi. What is her main point? What is she arguing here about holding oneself back? Yeah, Wendy.
Well, I can see a little bit of lack of trust of yourself. You're like, no, I don't have the ability to do that. I don't want to say anything to anybody else, because I might offend them, and then I will have to take up for what I'm talking about. And this is very good as far as looking at in a harm reduction. You can see that both sides, you're not going to get much harm reduction out of either side.
Yeah, let's look at that a little more closely. Like, if I hold back, like an example I gave, I said, I'm not going to make a comment in this class because it's just going to upset people, and it's really not my place to tell the professor how to run the class, and I would just cause harm by doing that. Is that the same thing as me saying, oh, I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm not going to say anything? Are those the same? Is it the same concept, in other words? To hold back for harm reduction as holding back for not wanting to offend people?
No. No. I don't think so.
And why not?
Because one, you're thinking about yourself, and the
Mhm.
other one, you're thinking about the people or animals or whatever are going to the harm.
Mhm.
You're thinking about yourself when you're like, oh no, I don't want to make anybody upset. But if you're thinking about, I haven't really been trained in this, do I really want to take the fire extinguisher off the wall and try to extinguish the fire when there's like 15 million people there that might know how to use that equipment and you don't? And so it's not like you are not being in your right space or right place. It's more like recognizing
Mm,
where your place is and saying, well, I'm just going to make it worse.
yeah. Yeah, thank you, Wendy. Sue, I know you had your hand up earlier. I don't know if your comment is still something you'd like to share. Or if we've moved past
Sure.
that.
Sure. I was just thinking about this whole Zoom thing, about how we're reticent to speak up. And I think that's interesting sometimes, because I think we're a little worried that what we say either won't be accepted, or it's not a good thing, or it's not helpful. And I don't know if that's pleasing others, but I think that happens a lot, that we have these thoughts, but we're like, oh, I don't know if I should say anything, you know, or I don't want to speak up, or you want to leave space for other people to talk. So you might not say something because you're leaving space. So
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking about.
thank you, Sue. Paul.
Yeah, I'm visiting my mom in assisted living, and I'm getting to know people here, and it's really interesting. It's a bit like being in high school again, in some ways, because you have a lot of people that are kind of thrown together, and they're sort of figuring out who they are. And what I'm noticing is that sometimes there is a sense of false modesty in the sense that somebody can project that, well, I wouldn't really want to say anything about this. It's not really my place. But really, they've been talking about it among their friends, and they've been saying a lot of things among their friends. And then that tends to be harmful to the morale of the community as a whole. Whereas being able to thoughtfully raise an issue, whether it's how come there's never enough salt on the table, whatever it might be, is bothering them. And not doing this false modesty where, no, it's really not my place to bring this up, is because people are scared. I think fundamentally that they're scared of actually stepping out. They don't know quite how to do it, and maybe because they're really, really angry underneath. I don't know, and they don't know how to get past that either. So it's an interesting conundrum that I know I found myself in before, and finding my way through that thicket is not always easy.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Paul. It could be scary to speak up. As you and Sue both said, is sort of in small ways or in bigger ways. And what might be a small way for one person, to me, might feel really big and really scary. So, and that's part of kind of the mindfulness approach. And it's like, well, yeah, it really is my place to speak here. And then, but I'm scared to do it. Then what are my options? Do I speak privately? Do I get some other people to support me? Do I screw up my courage? I don't know, but it's when we're in touch with what's really going on and have a sense for what our place is, that makes it easier to navigate. Eliana.
Hi.
Hi.
Um, I have the word conditioning came to my mind when you talked about humility, because I was conditioned from an early age that it was just very dysfunctional, and so I was afraid, and I was conditioned to go with the flow and to never, in alcoholic family, you just go with the flow, and you don't step out. So when I did step out, because I was kind of a black sheep, I got in a lot of trouble.
Mm.
So historically, I try not to ruffle anybody's feathers,
Yeah.
but now, it's not just ruffling feathers. I actually fear a physical bad reaction if I were to speak out in, say, a political forum. You know, I'm running on fear right now, and I'm pretty frozen. I'm frozen up, and I don't know that I could express an opinion if I knew I was right. You know, even though I'm grown up, you know, now, and I'm over all that other stuff, but it's helpful to listen to all this, because I want to occupy my space. I don't think I'm doing it. I think I'm hiding. I really think that's a character. I'm at that end of that spectrum, and I'm just plain hiding. So just wanted to chip in there.
Well, thank you, Eliana, and I'm listening with an open heart. And yeah, these are scary times, and there are very, real reasons why we might be nervous to speak out. And when we have a traumatic upbringing, whether it's substance abuse in the family or all kinds of other things, like those things are also in play. And yeah. We'll hear from Diana, and then we'll get ready to head to our breakout rooms.
Sometimes we don't know what our boundaries are. So my boundary may be it's okay for you to speak, but if I've never been in that room before, or in that class, or in that cafeteria where there's no salt on the table, I don't know the parameters to speak or who to speak to. And so I think part of humility is learning to feel safe where you are in being able to speak out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Diana. And that is, some of us have talked about, our experiences in the workplace, where in a good workplace, they will often tell you, just listen for a little while, just learn the lay of the land. And, I was pretty fearless in a lot of things, and sometimes about speaking out, but sometimes it was kind of the line between fearless and foolhardy, can get kind of blurry. And needlessly antagonizing people was not a good thing. And so we'll leave it at that. Let's take a look at our topic for the breakout rooms. And I see we've had Sarah and Carrie join us. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
So can I have a volunteer to just read the bullets so it's not only my voice? Yeah, Sue.
Okay, so harm reduction begins with the premise that all people deserve safety and dignity. It involves a number of practical strategies from Johns Hopkins website. While developed for treating drug addiction, it is applicable to Mussar practice. Given how upset you and others are right now, how might harm reduction help you live up to the mantra, no more than my place, not less than my space?
Hey, thank you. So I'll put these in the chat, but the idea is that with your partner, just talk about, like, what are some ways you could apply a harm reduction strategy to your interactions with other people right now in these charged times. And I'm thinking, about the Jewish and Jewish adjacent communities, but it can apply in more broadly than that as well. Okay, so first we'll put this in the chat. then I will open the breakout rooms.
Okay.
Okay, so the rooms are open. So just click the join room button and there you will go.
So,
So what does that
Just-
mean? Do we come early or late?
I don't know
We
where
come
this
at
is
5.
going right now.
Would we come at 5?
What did I miss? Is there daylight savings time or something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
a daylight
must be
savings
with
time
the-
discussion.
Uh-oh.
Why would that change anything?
right.
Oh, because we don't
Exactly.
change here in
Arizona
Arizona.
stays the
Who
same.
doesn't change? Oh, Arizona doesn't change.
Oh.
Oh, Arizona, you
We're the
don't.
only smart ones.
We're the only ones, that's for sure.
Flying.
Now Indiana.
You stay.
Yeah. I have to look it up. I say, what time is it in California right now?
I
And I
know.
know where to come.
We're 49.
We like to
Well,
be
there's
very
Greg. You disappeared for a minute.
We have a lot of
I am
Navajo.
Just sitting
Navajo
back
back
looking
here.
at his chicks.
So, how would anyone care to share maybe some insights from the discussion? How might we apply sort of a harm reduction strategy? Yeah, Sue.
Well, first of all, I love these breakout sessions. They're really healing. So thank you. I love meeting you, talking to you, meeting you on a personal level. And one of the things that was said, we talked about music and singing. And I had read in your chapter, Greg, about tactics to deal with this. And one of the things you talked about was the power of singing and music. And
Yeah.
I thought that was wonderful. And I think that can really help us going forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. And I'm so glad that you like the breakouts. Yeah, I think they're kind of the secret sauce of the community, is just having that time for the one-on-one. So I'm glad it's still working. And people get really unhappy if it's too short, and understandably so. Other thoughts, other things about harm reduction that anyone would like to share, other insights from your discussion? Yeah, Marianne.
Well, I was thinking that that I can be too far on the side of too passive on the side of humility because I'm trying to reduce the harm. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it does. It's kind of like what we were talking about like before. There's the I don't want to upset people versus I want to reduce the harm. And it can be sort of a gray line. And there are things that today, if like if everyone is sort of their more normal times, I might make a different decision. But like I have friends who are really in a different place politically about Israel and where they should go. And sometimes I really try to lean into the difference and understand and talk. And I'm not doing that now because I'm fragile, they're fragile. It's just the energy it takes to kind of hold the differences. So, for the sake of everyone, it's just not the right time to do that. Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, I think that if I remember correctly, with my partner and I, we talked about how you cannot change the other person. So if the other person is so diametrically opposed to your thoughts, to do the harm reduction is to diffuse the situation by holding back. And with that, does prevent you not showing your truth, unfortunately. So both of you can't show your truth. But in certain times, it might be better not to do that, because there's some situations that you're just meeting a brick wall no matter what the discussion is. If you just don't see eye to eye, and it's better to diffuse the situation and go into a totally different topic.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's all kinds of gradations. Thank you, Nancy. I'm going to diffuse the situation by not going there, which can be really different than like pretending to agree with someone. It can be like, okay, well, I don't think this is where we want to go today. So for the sake of the relationship, let's move to another topic. But if there's a personal safety issue involved, it might be, you know what? Yeah, I'm totally with you, while I scoot over towards the exit, so yeah, and we are sort of empowered to make our own decisions for what we think is best for ourselves and for the circumstance. So thank you. Let's see, we have Wendy and then Paul and then Dell. Marianne, was there something else you wanted to say? I see your hand is still up.
Yes, and you can wait till the end or just ignore this.
No, let's let you go, because we were
okay. So I don't know what it's like in California, but I think there's the Muslims and Jews are being much more targeted, I think. Yeah. And so I'm practicing harm reduction by not advertising that I'm Jewish and maybe not going to synagogue. But I want to know if other people have thought about this and if they think it's an overreaction. But if this is too off topic, I'm fine with us not going there.
Let's maybe hold on how other people feel about that, but I would just say I don't think that's an uncommon reaction, what you're talking about. And perhaps at the end, or maybe after we close, if people want to stay and discuss, we could do that a little bit. Wendy.
Well, my breakout partner and I find ourselves on different spectrums than we were used to, and also on different spectrums, so from each other. But in the long run, we realize that we're where we are and we're supposed to be there at this time. So that sometimes you just have to kind of accept yourself and accept, be self-aware, more self-aware, because we're kind of in the position right now that, I'm doing a lot of talking beyond where I'm used to doing for this grant that I'm writing for the temple. And she is introspective right now from, working through what we work through for Yom Kippur, and because of her position. So I could just see she's formulating, things to say and do, and I'm having to do it. I was thrown into it. So
yeah. Thank you, Wendy. Paul.
Yeah, I just something that was being said about the power of music and singing, and I think that the things that are orthogonal to whatever the disagreement might be between me and somebody else, whether it's play or it's singing or listening to music or dancing or doing something else experiential, playing sports even, just any of these things are things that we can enjoy. And I know that there are political people who, like when Boehner and Obama went and played golf, they were trying to build a bridge just by going out and playing a game and not having to think about politics or talk about it. Of course, Boehner got really excoriated because of that, so he never did it again. But it's not uncommon for people who are on different sides of the aisle in politics to do things that they can enjoy together, because they still have to work together. But you have to know that you need to work together. And just on a private note, I just know the same thing happens with me in my friendships and with my loved ones. So finding ways to not just go head to head on something, but to remember that there are things that we enjoy doing together is really important.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, that's definitely a harm reduction. We can do things we enjoy together, or we can get into it for areas that we disagree. And Dell.
So Toby and I might be on opposite sides of the continent, but I think we formulated a common question: how to deal with harms, how to reduce harms that originate internally. So it's not a harm that you're creating yourself.
Dell, you're breaking
It's
up just a
created,
little.
and it's either oh, sorry about that. Or am I still getting
better
through?
now? So why don't you just start again?
Okay, so the question that we formulated is this: how to deal with harms that are external to you, and that are either just massive or anonymous, because Jewish communities in Canada and the United States have been confronted with acts of anonymous vandalism. In Toronto, there was a Zoom meeting of the UJA on Monday, alerting members to a risk of harm. People showing up, taking photographs of mezuzot on people's homes, and a massive protest around a Jewish restaurant in Toronto.
I think we
How
get
do you
the idea,
confront that
Paul.
sort of So how do you confront that sort of harm that's either anonymous or is so multitudinous that you can't meet it one-on-one?
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, what we're going to do now is we'll close with meditation, and then if anyone who wants to stay and sort of approach the question that Marianne posed about sort of personal safety and, do I kind of go more on the down low about being Jewish? We can stay for a few minutes to kind of explore that. But right now, I invite you to close your eyes. And I'm going to read a quote. So taking again, a deep breath through the nose and a nice leisurely exhale. And we'll hear the words of Rabbi Bahya ibn Pakuda from his book, Duties of the Heart, the first Mussar book that was written in the 11th century. When I planned to execute my decision to write this book, I saw that the one like me is unworthy of writing a book like this. And I decided my ability would not suffice. So I considered changing my mind and abandoning the book. But I reconsidered and became suspicious of myself for having chosen to rest and dwell in the abode of peace and tranquility. If all those involved in good causes were to remain silent, and still until they could completely attain their ideal, no one would ever say a word. Let's all consider again, what is my space and what is my place right now? Where is it that I might consider speaking? And where is it better to remain silent? What do I need for myself? For my own physical health, for my own mental health. How can I contribute to the safety of others? By speaking or not speaking? By taking up more space? Or by taking up less space?
Well, is this Chris? You're the vice president?
And then now let's tilt our head back and open our jaw and smile. And just take a moment of gratitude for having this hour to spend with fellow souls on a journey together. And feel the strength and warmth and love of community. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.